Naaman was a war hero, commander of the army of the king of Syria. Came to Israel looking for a cure for leprosy. Brought silver, brought gold, brought letters from his king. The prophet didn't even come out to meet him. Sent a servant with a message: go dip 7 times in the Jordan. Naaman left in a rage. A muddy river 7 times, no ceremony, no spectacle. And his servants had to talk him down. The healing wasn't in the magnitude of the instruction. The healing was in the smallness of the obedience. Naaman wanted the prophet to come outside with full ceremony, wave his hand over the spot like it was a coronation. Wanted to cure the match the stature of the man requesting it, and Elisha didn't even show up to the door. That's the slight. Sent a servant with a 1-line instruction: go dip in the Jordan. And then Naaman raged: and not the rivers of Damascus better than all the waters of Israel? Could he not have made me clean in those? Why the specific water? Why 7 times? Why not a single command? That's the pride underneath the prayer for breakthrough. We want the miracle, but we want to negotiate the method. We want the healing, but we want to choose the river. And God keeps us out in the small obedience that doesn't make us look impressive. The pride isn't needing a cure to come with a spotlight. The healing is hidden in the act we think is beneath our position. Naaman's pride almost cost me the healing. Naaman's pride wanted the cure to match the cover photo. A muddy river 7 times, no audience watching. That's the small obedience. The breakthrough is hiding inside. Naaman's pride. My servants had to talk me down. Said, Master, if he'd asked you something great, you would've done it. Why not the small thing? Why not the unimpressive instruction? Naaman's pride laid down at the river. The servants of Naaman were the unsung heroes of a story. The text gives them no name, just the men who reasoned with the general. Said, if the prophet had told you to do something great, wouldn't you do it? How much more than when he says, wash and be clean? And the reasoning broke through the rage, because the rage was about ego, not about logic. And once the ego cracked enough to consider the small instruction, the general got down off his horse and waded into the muddy water. He dipped once and came up, no change. Dip twice, no change. 3, 4, 5, 6, no change. Imagine the temptation to quit after the 6th time with no result. Imagine the pride asking, we sure about this prophet, but he dipped the 7th time and his flesh came back like a young boy. The completeness of the obedience produced the completeness of the healing. 6 dips would have been a story about how prophets can't be trusted. 7 dips made him a testimony in 2 kings. Naaman's pride almost cost me the healing. Naaman's pride wanted the cure to match the cover photo. A muddy river 7 times, no audience watching. That's the small obedience. The breakthrough was hiding inside. Naaman's pride. My servants had to talk me down. Said, Master, if he'd asked you something great, you would've done it. Why not the small thing? Why not the unimpressive instruction? Naaman's pride laid down at the river. God hides breakthroughs inside small obediences, because pride won't bow to instructions that don't impress it. He's not looking for performance. He's looking for the man who'll go to the muddy river without an audience and without a ceremony, because he trusts that God assigned the river for a reason. The smallness of the instruction is the test. The completeness of the obedience is the cure. I've been numbing about more things than I wanna admit. Wanted big miracles, but wouldn't do the small obediences attached. Wanted the financial breakthrough, but wouldn't tithe consistently. Wanted the marriage to heal, but wouldn't apologize first. Wanted the calling to activate, but wouldn't show up to the church I dislike. And every time I finally got down off the horse and waded in, the healing was waiting in water. I've been refusing to tithe. Naaman's pride almost cost me the healing. Naaman's pride wanted the cure to match the cover photo. A muddy river 7 times, no audience watching. That's the small obedience. The breakthrough is hiding inside. Naaman's pride. My servants had to talk me down. Said, Master, if he'd asked you something great, you would've done it. Why not the small thing? Why not the unimpressive instruction? Naaman's pride laid down at the river. Whatever river God's been telling you to dip in, get in the water. Don't argue about the temperature. Don't argue about the location. Don't argue about the number of times. The healing isn't in the spectacle, it's in the 7 dips. Get in. Get in. Genesis 2 verse 7. And the Lord God formed man of the dust of the ground and breathed into his nostrils the breath of life. And man became a living soul. 2 ingredients, dust and breath. Without the breath, the dust stays on the ground. Without the dust, the breath has nothing to inhabit. And the moment I forget either half of that equation, I either think too much of myself or too little. The dust keeps me humble, the breath keeps me alive. Both are necessary to remember. God didn't make Adam from gold, a marble, a precious stone. Didn't pull material from heaven, didn't import some superior substance. Reached down and took dust from the ground he had just finished making. That's the building material of the most expensive creation in scripture. And God himself bent down and shaped it with his own hands. Then breathed his own breath in the nostrils that were lungs of clay. The combination of dust and breath made me a living soul. Either one without the other, and I'm not a person, I'm an incomplete project. I forget the dust when I start believing my own press release. When the platform grows and the recognition compounds, and I lose the perspective that every gift I'm operating in came on loan from the hand that breathed me. And every breath I'm taking right now belongs to the one who issued it. I am dust on credit, dust with breath, but dust nonetheless. And the breath gets withdrawn the day God says we're done here. Forgetting the dust is the original sin in every generation. You start thinking you built yourself, and you can't even build your next breath. Dust in his hand, that's the material I'm made of. Dust in his hand, the breath I'm using isn't mine to keep. Two ingredients made me a soul, and I borrow both of them. The dust came from the ground, the breath came from the throne. Humility isn't a virtue I'm cultivating. Humility is the only accurate self-assessment available. And that's not a downgrade, that's a foundation. The man who remembers the dust handles the breath responsibly. Psalm 101:3 says it plainer than any sermon could ever say it. For he know what the frame he remember with that we are dust. That's not God being condescending, that's God being honest. The maker doesn't forget the material of his own making, and his tenderness toward us is because of, not in spite of our composition. Dust is fragile, dust is temporary, dust is dependent, and God's mercy is specifically designed for that condition. A merciless God in a dust-based species would be a poor design. I wanna be a man who remembers his composition every morning. Doesn't need a humiliation to recover the dust perspective. Doesn't need a loss to recall the borrowed breath situation. The kind of man whose default is the right self-assessment. Not because I'm performing humility for the room, because humility is the only true thing I can say about myself. The achievement, the reputation, the platform, those are weather. The dust is the climate, the breath is on loan, that's permanent truth. Dust in his hand, that's the material I'm made of. Dust in his hand, the breath I'm using isn't mine to keep. Two ingredients made me a soul, and I borrow both of them. The dust came from the ground, the breath came from the throne. Humility isn't a virtue I'm cultivating. Humility is the only accurate self-assessment available. And that's not a downgrade, that's a foundation. The man who remembers the dust handles the breath responsibly. On Ash Wednesday in some traditions the priest says, remember thou art dust, and to dust thou shalt return. That's not a curse, that's a calibration. The man who remembers he's dust doesn't take himself too seriously, doesn't argue too long, doesn't hold grudges that don't fit his lifespan, doesn't build kingdoms made of materials his breath can't sustain. The dust is the freedom. Once you remember what you're made of, the pressure to be a god finally lifts, and you can finally enjoy being a man. There's a quiet rest available to the man who knows his composition. A peace that arrives when you stop trying to outrun your own makeup. Yes, I'm dust, and yes, I have breath that doesn't belong to me. And in the space between those two facts is the actual life I'm giving. Not too high, not too low, not falsely impressed with myself, not falsely diminished into something less than image-bearing dust. Just dust with breath, walking through a borrowed lifespan with awareness of where I came from, what I'm made of, and where I'm headed back to. Dust in his hand, that's the material I'm made of. Dust in his hand, the breath I'm using isn't mine to keep. Two ingredients made me a soul, and I borrow both of them. The dust came from the ground, the breath came from the throne. Humility isn't a virtue I'm cultivating. Humility is the only accurate self-assessment available. Cain asked God a question after he killed his brother. Am I my brother's keeper? He He asked it like the answer was supposed to be no, like he was off the hook by definition. But the question revealed more about Cain than the murder did. A man who doesn't know he's his brother's keeper will always find a way to bury what should have been protected. I'm asking the question back in reverse. Yes, I am. That's not a burden, that's a calling. There's a kind of individualism that calls itself freedom, a version of independence that's actually just isolation, that tells me my brother's struggle is his own problem, that I don't owe him my time, my attention, my intervention. But that's not what the scripture taught me about community. The early church had everything in common, that's Acts 2. Not his policy, but his posture. Not his law, but his love of people who refuse to let a brother be lonely in his crisis. I'm my brother's keeper. That's not codependence, that's recognizing the bloodline runs deeper than DNA. That every man in the body is connected to me at the soul. And when he hurts, I should feel the resonance of it. When he's losing his way, I should be the voice that calls his name. When he's been quiet too long, I should be the one who checks. That's not optional Christianity, that's the actual gospel, lived out in the boring details of an ordinary Tuesday. My brother's keeper, that's the answer I refuse to skip. My brother's keeper. When nobody else is asking the question, I'm the one who shows up at his door. I'm the one who calls when the silence is too long. My brother's keeper, that's the assignment. Can't ask it like a defense, I ask it like a commitment. Yes, I am. That's the only honest answer. My brother's keeper, and I'm not putting that down. There's a man in my life I almost lost because I was busy. Almost let the friendship drift because we both had careers. Almost let pride do the slow work of building a wall between us, until something in me said, you cannot afford to lose this man. And I picked up the phone, said an awkward apology first, said the thing that admits I haven't been showing up the way I should. And only at the end was a man who had been waiting for the call, had been suffering quietly for months while I assumed he was fine. Quiet suffering is the most dangerous kind in a man's life, because we're trained that the broadcast was killing us, trained to handle it, to hold it down, to keep moving. And the brothers I love are conditioned the same way I am. So if I wait for him to ask, I will wait until I'm at the funeral. Doesn't matter, I refuse to keep doing. The check-in is the keeping, the phone call is the prevention, the awkward conversation now is the rescue from the eulogy later. My brother's keeper, that's the answer I refuse to skip. My brother's keeper. When nobody else is asking the question, I'm the one who shows up at his door. I'm the one who calls when the silence is too long. My brother's keeper, that's the assignment. Can't ask it like a defense, I ask it like a commitment. Yes, I am. That's the only honest answer. My brother's keeper, and I'm not putting that down. Jesus said, greater love is no man in this, that he laid down his life for his friends. Most of us will never face that literal moment, but the daily version exists. Lay down your schedule, lay down your convenience, lay down your need to be right, lay down your busy season, lay down your reasonable excuse for not calling them back. That's the cross at the level we actually live. The keeper doesn't always die for his brother, but he always inconveniences himself for him. The brother I'm keeping doesn't always know I'm keeping him. Doesn't see the prayer list with his name on it nightly. Doesn't see the times I ask the Holy Spirit to cover him at 2 a.m. Doesn't know I'm adjusting my own life to be available when he calls. That's the keeping nobody applauds, the invisible work of being available. And I'm doing the same for him without his knowledge. That's how the body works, underneath the surface visibility. Each man holding up another man without making a production. My brother's keeper, that's the answer I refuse to skip. My brother's keeper. When nobody else is asking the question, I'm the one who shows up at his door. I'm the one who calls when the silence is too long. My brother's keeper, that's the assignment. Can't ask it like a defense, I ask it like a commitment. Yes, I am. That's the only honest answer. My brother's keeper, and I'm not putting that down. Call him today, not next week, today. The brother you've been thinking about, call him. The friend whose name keeps coming up in your spirit, call him. You are your brother's keeper. That's not theology, that's instruction. Pick up the phone, that's the keeping. Ruth was a foreigner, a widow, a woman with no inheritance and no name. She came to Bethlehem with her mother-in-law Naomi, and the first thing she did was go work the gleaning field. That's the corners of the harvest, the leftover wheat the law said to leave for the poor and the foreigner. Ruth worked the corners with her head down, showed up early, stayed late, and Boaz noticed before she ever introduced herself. The hidden work was the audition. The corners were the resume. Ruth didn't apply for the position, she just showed up to the corners. Wasn't trying to meet Boaz, wasn't networking, wasn't strategizing. Was just trying to keep her mother-in-law fed in a foreign country. And the consistency of the work caught the eye of the owner of the field. Boaz asked his foreman, who is this woman? Where did she come from? And the foreman gave a report Boaz could verify. She came in this morning at the first light and hasn't sat down except briefly. That's the kind of testimony only the witness can deliver. I've been working corners that nobody was watching me work, showing up early to assignments where no manager was tracking attendance, doing excellent work in obscurity because the work itself was the assignment. Yeah, not the credit, not the promotion, not the notice, just the work. And eventually the kind of work you do in the corners gets reported, even when you weren't trying to be noticed. The consistency starts speaking. The foreman comes back from the field with a report about you that you didn't write, but you wrote with your presence in the corners. The gleaning field, that's where the testimony forms. Head down working corners, nobody clocking you yet. The gleaning field, with character outproduces credentials, and the consistency of the showing up becomes the actual resume. Boaz noticed before Ruth ever spoke. Sometimes the field reports your name before you do. The gleaning field, I'm working corners now, trusting that the report eventually reaches the right ear. Notice the order of events in Ruth's story. This matters. Ruth didn't get recognized first and didn't go to work. Ruth went to work first and then got recognized. The field was the application, the recognition was the response. And too many believers want the order reversed, want the platform before the practice, the title before the time in the field. But the field is where God forms the character that can carry the title, and the title placed on untracked the ground will collapse the structure. Boaz said something to Ruth that hits me every time I read it. He said it has fully been shown me all that thou has done, not just the gleaning, all of it. The loyalty to Naomi, the leaving the Moab, the choice to follow a God you didn't grow up worshiping. All of it has been shown me. Ruth, the field telegraphs character, the God who sees in secret rewards the field work openly eventually. But the field work has to come first in obscurity without an audience. That's the order, that's not negotiable. That's where the testimony forms. Head down working corners, nobody clocking you yet. What character outproduces credentials, and the consistency of the showing up becomes the actual resume. Boaz noticed before Ruth ever spoke. Sometimes the field reports your name before you do. I'm working corners now, trusting that the report eventually reaches the right ear. Ruth ended up in the lineage of King David. 4 generations later, Obed, Jesse, David. And David's line led to Jesus himself. A Moabite widow gleaning corners in Bethlehem became the great-grandmother of the king through whose line the Messiah came. The corners weren't a small assignment. The corners were the throne room in disguise. Don't despise the day of small beginnings. Zechariah 4 verse 10. What you call gleaning? God calls genealogy. I'm not despising the corners I'm working anymore. Not measuring my obedience against somebody else's platform. Not asking why my season looks small while somebody else's looks expansive. Because the corner work is the lineage work, and lineage is invisible. You don't see the great-grandchildren of your obedience from where you stand. You just see today's wheat, tomorrow's wheat, the slow build of a faithful season. But the foreman is watching, and the field is keeping the report, and the gleaning will eventually be told. It's testimony for the next 10 generations. The gleaning field, that's where the testimony forms. Head down working corners, nobody clocking you yet. The gleaning field, with character outproduce his credentials, and the consistency of the showing up becomes the actual resume. Boys know this before Ruth ever spoke. Sometimes the field reports your name before you do. I'm working corners now, trusting that the report eventually reaches the right ear. Proverbs 27, verse 17. Iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another. Sharpening makes noise, that's the part we don't address. Sharpening makes sparks fly off both blades. The friction is the feature, not the malfunction. If your friends never push back, they're not iron, they're sponge, and sponge can't sharpen anything. I'd rather have one iron friend than 10 yes men in the rotation. Iron sharpens iron, that's not a quote, that's a process. Hard on hard, friction guaranteed, results not always weightless. My closest brothers call me out before the world ever calls me out. Hit me with the truth I was avoiding while I sat at my own meeting in doubt. Said the thing I needed to hear with the timing I wasn't ready for. Cost me my comfort but bought me a version of myself I couldn't reach before. That's the math of iron, I'm comfortable today, undefeated tomorrow. The blade I trust most is the brother who's never been afraid to draw. I don't trust a friend who agrees with everything I say. That's not loyalty, that's somebody managing me with delay. Loyalty looks like the man who interrupts me mid-rationalization. Says, brother, let's run that back, that ain't aligning with the conversation we had last quarter when you told me what you actually believe. You're moving away from your own word and I'm not gonna let you leave. That's iron, that's the kind of relationship I'm building my life around. Yes men make weak swords, iron men make me sharp. The iron sharpens, that's the friction I welcome. Hard on hard, sparks flying, both blades getting better. The iron sharpens, I need brothers who push back, not the men who match my volume, the men who match my standard. The iron sponge friends keep me dull. I'd rather take the cut from somebody who actually loves me. And I'm grateful for the grind. The blade I am today was forged by men who told me the truth. Solomon wrote this proverb knowing what he was talking about. The wisest king in the Bible had 1,000 wives and 1,000,000 counselors. Knew the difference between an echo chamber and an iron chamber. Knew that wisdom doesn't form in isolation, it forms in collision. Two minds disagreeing in love produces a third option. Either saw alone, that's the gift of the iron friend. They bring perspectives I don't own and refuse to let me settle for the half-truth I was running with. The full picture only emerges when somebody else gets this to dispute it. I've been sharpening my men who corrected me publicly, men who pulled me aside privately when public would have humiliated me, men who timed the truth to my readiness without lying to me. In the meantime, men whose track record gave them the credit to speak hard things. And every one of those friendships caused both of us comfort at some point. Every one of those friendships is still in the rotation because the cost paid out. You can tell iron from copper by what survives the heat. Copper melts, iron sharpens. That's the friction I welcome. Hard on hard, sparks flying, both blades getting better. I need brothers who push back, not the men who match my volume, the men who match my standard. Sponge friends keep me dull. I'd rather take the cut from somebody who actually loves me. And I'm grateful for the grind. The blade I am today was forged by a man who told me the truth. Faithful are the wounds of a friend, that's Proverbs 27 verse 6. But the kisses of an enemy are deceitful. Read that twice. A friend wounds, an enemy kisses. The truth told in love is the wound that actually heals. The flattery from somebody with an agenda is the kiss that actually kills. If you can't tell the difference, you're reading the wrong faces. The man cutting you is loving you. The man co-signing you might be eating you. I wanna be iron for somebody too, that's the other side of this. Wanna be the man whose love is sharp enough to actually serve a brother, not the man who watches him drift while saying nothing because comfort. Not the man who waits until the funeral to wish he's spoken. The iron is two sides, receiving and cutting, offering it. Both require the same trust and a friendship to do correctly. And I'm building toward being that man, the one whose word lays true, the one whose friendship costs something and is worth what it costs. The iron sharp, that's the friction I welcome. Caught on hard, sparks flying, both blades getting better. The iron sharp, I need brothers who push back, not the men who match my volume, the men who match my standard. The iron sharp, bunch friends keep me dull. I'd rather take the cut from somebody who actually loves me. The iron sharp, and I'm grateful for the grind. The blade I am today was forged by a man who told me the truth.
out of your circle? Who's been iron for you this year? Who's told you the hard truth and kept showing up?
James chapter 5, Hosea chapter 6. The early rain comes in October to start the planting season. The latter rain comes in March and April to swell the harvest before it's gathered. Without the latter rain, the grain doesn't fill out, the fruit doesn't sweeten. The early rain begins the work, the latter rain finishes it. And the scripture says God will pour out His Spirit in latter rain quantities at the end of the age. The best rain comes in the final season. The harvest is finished by what falls last. Hosea said it plain in chapter 6, verse 3. Let us follow one and know the Lord is going forth, is prepared as the morning. And He shall come unto us as the rain, as the latter and former rain unto the earth. That's the verse I've been holding through long dry seasons, where the early rain came years ago and felt like the whole story, where the seed got planted and grew part way and then the heat moved in. And I started to wonder if the harvest was going to fill out properly. Started to wonder if what I planted was all I was going to receive. But the agricultural cycle in Israel had 2 rainy seasons by design. The early rain in autumn to start the planting, and the latter rain in spring to finish what the early rain began. Without the second rain, the harvest is a fraction of what it could have been. The grain is there, but it's not full. The fruit is on the tree, but it's not ripe. And too many believers think the early rain was the whole word, that what they received at the beginning was supposed to carry the entire crop. But the latter rain is in the scripture for a reason. In the late season is when the harvest actually finished. The latter rain, we saving the best for the end of the season. The latter rain, the early rain wasn't the whole word. What He started in me back then needed a second rain to finish, and the second rain is coming on the calendar I didn't write. The latter rain, and the harvest is filling out now. The grain is getting heavy, the fruit is finally ripening. The latter rain, I waited through dry seasons for this, and the wait was worth was coming back through it. James used the same picture in chapter 5. Be patient, brethren. Behold, the husbandman waits for the precious fruit of the earth, and hath no patience for it until he receives the early and latter rain. Be ye also patient. Establish your hearts. The coming of the Lord draws nigh. The patience James commanded was specifically the patience of the husbandman who plants the early rain and then waits through a long dry middle for the latter rain that finishes what was started. That's the kind of patience the gospel requires of the believer. I've been impatient with my own field for too long. Looked at the partial harvest and assumed it was the whole crop. Forgot that latter rain was promised for the same field. The early rain landed on the grain that looked unfinished, was waiting for the second rain. Not waiting to be replanted, not waiting to be uprooted, not waiting to be replaced, just waiting for the rain that was always on the calendar. And the rain is coming. The wait was the husbandman's discipline. The latter rain in Joel chapter 2 is connected to outpouring of the Spirit. I will pour out my Spirit upon all flesh. That prophecy was quoted by Peter at Pentecost in Acts chapter 2. The latter rain has theological weight as the end of age outpouring, which means whatever season you're in, the rain that's coming at the end is bigger than the rain that started it. The Spirit at the end of the age comes in latter rain volume, and the harvest gathered in that rain is the harvest that finishes the story. I'm watching the latter rain start in my own field these days. The seeds that look dormant for years are pulling moisture again. The grain I thought was stunted is filling out the way it was always supposed to. The fruit is sweetening on the branch like a second rain unlocks something that the first rain only initiated, that the dry season only paused. Then the harvest is coming in heavier than I expected based on the dry middle, because the latter rain doesn't replace the early rain. It completes it, and the completion is the harvest worth waiting through the wait for the latter rain. He's saving the best for the end of the season. The latter rain, the early rain wasn't the whole world. What He started in me back then needed a second rain to finish. Second rain, He's coming on the calendar I didn't write. The latter rain, and the harvest is filling out now. The grain is getting heavy, the fruit is finally ripening. The latter rain, I waited through dry seasons for this, and the wait was was coming back through it. Be patient. The early rain was not the whole story. The latter rain
is on the calendar. The harvest is coming back. We'll be finished by what falls last. Establish your heart. The husbandman is waiting for the same rain. You are.
Joshua 5 verse 12. And the manna ceased on the morrow after they had eaten of the old corn of the land. Neither had the children of Israel manna anymore, but they did eat of the fruit of the land of Canaan that year. 40 years of supernatural bread every morning. Then one Tuesday morning, no manna on the ground. Cause they were in the promised land now. And the temporary provision ended when the permanent provision began. God doesn't keep sending the wilderness food when you've crossed into the harvest country. The manna fell for 40 years, that's the data the book gives us. Every morning except the Sabbath, fresh bread on the desert floor. A whole generation grew up never knowing food came from work. Cause in the wilderness food came from sky, and gathering was the only labor. But the moment Israel crossed the Jordan into Canaan, something shifted. They harvested old corn from the fields the Canaanites had planted. They produced that grew from soil rather than dew that arrived overnight. And on the very next morning the manna stopped completely, permanently. That's the part of God's provision I had to learn to recognize. The manna seasons in my life ended when the harvest seasons began. And I almost missed the transition because I kept looking for the dew, kept expecting morning bread on the ground when God had moved me to the field. The new provision came through work, through systems, through harvest. And the supernatural bread became unnecessary because the natural arrived. Not because God's provision diminished, because His provision matured. Different season, different method, same provider. The manna stopped, and I almost didn't recognize the upgrade. The manna stopped because the harvest country was open. He doesn't keep sending wilderness bread when the field is in front of you. The provision changes form when the season changes address. The manna stopped, and I had to learn to eat from the land. Stop waiting for dew that wasn't gonna fall in Canaan. The manna stopped, and the bread of the harvest country was the new evidence that He never stopped being the provider. It's a kind of nostalgia for the manna season that traps grown believers, where the supernatural was so obvious you didn't have to work for the bread. Then the transition into the harvest country feels like provision diminished, cause now you have to plant, water, harvest, meal, bake, the steps multiply. But that's not diminishment, that's promotion in the greater responsibility. God moved you out of the wilderness because He trusted you with the harvest. The manna was infant formula, the harvest is adult food. Different stages of the same kingdom, feeding the same children. I had to grieve the end of the manna season in my own life. There was a sweetness to the supernatural that the harvest doesn't have, a simplicity to needing nothing but the morning gathering. But the harvest country has its own sweetness I almost missed by morning. The taste of food I planted, watered, watched grow, gathered, prepared. The dignity of partnership with God and producing the provision. Different sweetness equally is just maturing through stages. Joshua 5 has a detail most people miss right before the manna stopped. The men of war who came out of Egypt had all died in the wilderness. A new generation had grown up, and they were circumcised at Gilgal before they entered the harvest country. The covenant sign was renewed before the new provision arrived. You don't get the harvest country without the covenant renewal first. The manna ends, but only after a generation has been reset. The provision matures with the people maturing. I'm in a harvest season right now, and I had to stop waiting for manna. Stop expecting the easy bread, it doesn't require my hands to be involved. The provision now comes through work I planted years ago. Through relationships I cultivated, through skills I disciplined. And the bread is no less from Him, just because it came through process. Every harvest meal in Canaan was as supernatural as every morning's manna in the wilderness. The provider didn't change, the method of provision matured to match the man. And I'm grateful for both seasons, because both seasons were Him. And I almost didn't recognize the upgrade, cause the harvest country was open. He doesn't keep sending wilderness bread when the field is in front of you. The provision changes form when the season changes address. And I had to learn to eat from the land. Stop waiting for dew that wasn't gonna fall in Canaan. And the bread of the harvest country was the new evidence that He never stopped being the provider. If the manna stopped in your life recently,
That's not abandonment, that's promotion. You're in the harvest country now.
Eat from the land.
The provider is the same. The provision is just maturing. God told Abraham, take your son, your only son Isaac, whom you love, and offer him as a burnt offering on the mountain I will show you. Abraham didn't argue, didn't bargain, didn't ask for clarification. Got up early in the morning and started walking. 3 days to the mountain, 3 days to think about it. And when he got there, he built the altar and bound his son, because he believed God could raise the dead if it came to that. The mountain wasn't the obstacle to the promise. The mountain was the method God used to make the man. Abraham walked 3 days carrying a knife in the fire. Isaac walked beside him, carrying the wood for his own altar. And somewhere in that 3-day journey, Abraham made peace with the math, made peace that the God who promised through Isaac couldn't lie about Isaac, made peace that resurrection was on the table if death came up. That's not blind obedience, that's argued obedience. He'd already negotiated with God for Sodom, he knew how to push back. But on the mountain he didn't push back because he'd already wrestled with it. And every wrestling match he'd already won made the next one possible. The hardest test God ever gave Abraham came after the longest preparation. After he left Ur, after he buried Sarah's father, after Hagar and Ishmael, after every smaller test had built the muscle for the largest one. The mountain wasn't an isolated assignment, it was the graduation. And graduation only comes after the curriculum is complete. You don't get the mountain test before the desert tests. And the desert tests aren't punishment, they're tuition. The mountain was the method, not the obstacle, the equipment. The mountain was the method, what he used to build me into a man. The hardest test wasn't trying to break me, it was forming me. Every step up that incline I became someone who could carry the car. And I almost missed the lesson, begging for the easier path while the path was making a profit. The mountain was the method, and I'm grateful for the climb. Even now, especially now. The angel stopped Abraham's hand at the last possible moment, and in the thicket behind him around was caught by his horns. The substitute was already there before Abraham raised the knife. Provision was waiting in the bushes the whole time he was climbing. And Abraham called that place Jehovah Jireh, the Lord will provide. But notice what Abraham named at the moment of provision. He named the mountain, the site of the test, because the provision became visible because of the climb. That's the part of provision I miss when I'm trying to skip the mountain. The ram in the thicket is only revealed when you walk to the altar. You don't see what God has prepared from the bottom of the hill. You see it from the position of obedience at the top. And every man who walked the hard road with a knife in his hand discovers that God had already placed a substitute in the thicket. But you have to do the climbing to see the provision. That's not theology, that's terrain. The mountain was the method, not the obstacle, the equipment. The mountain was the method, what he used to build me into a man. The hardest test wasn't trying to break me, it was forming me. Every step up that incline I became someone who could carry the car. And I almost missed the lesson, begging for the easier path while the path was making a profit. The mountain was the method, and I'm grateful for the climb. Even now, especially now. Mount Moriah is the same mountain where Solomon would later build a temple. The same ridge where Abraham walked with the knife became the address of God's dwelling place on earth. The site of the hardest tests became the location of the highest worship. What you walk up in obedience becomes a place God inhabits. The mountain isn't just for you, it's the future address of something the next generation will worship in. I had my own Mariah seasons, assignments I didn't volunteer for, seasons where the climb made no sense, given the promises I received, seasons where God seemed to be asking me to lay down the thing He told me to spend my life building. And I climbed anyway, not without questions, not without grief. Climb because the God who gave the promise was bigger than the test. And every time I made the climb in real time, I found provision waiting at the altar I thought would cost me everything. The mountain was the method for me too, for you too. The mountain was a method, not the obstacle, the equipment. The mountain was a method, what he used to build me into a man. The hardest test wasn't trying to break me, it was forming me. Every step up that incline, I became someone who could carry the gospel. And I almost missed the lesson. Had the easier path, while the path was making the profit.
Jesus didn't say turn the other cheek because the slap didn't matter. He said it because you're not the kind of man who slaps back. That's a different kind of strength. The kind that knows what it can do and chooses not to. Restraint isn't weakness pretending to be virtue. Restraint is power that's been disciplined. And the street version of me thought it was the opposite for years. I grew up where the rules were clear. Somebody hit you, you hit back. Anything else got read as weakness, got marked as fair game. That's not religion, that's geography. Survival math in a hard zip code. Then I met a man who said love your enemies, bless those who curse you. And my first reaction was, he don't know the block I'm from. He don't know what they do to a man who won't return fire. But he did know, he came from a region with his own version of the same code. And he chose the cross anyway. And that wasn't a man losing the fight. The cross was not Jesus losing. The cross was Jesus refusing to let that violence write his response. He could have called 12 legions of angels in his own defense. And he restrained that power deliberately, invisibly. That's the masculine model nobody taught me growing up. Strength that knows its capacity and limits its application. The other cheek, that's not weakness, that's containment. The other cheek I could have, but I chose not to. The real flex is the man who has the capacity and rules himself. Anybody can swing back. The question is who can hold still. The other cheek. Jesus modeled the highest form of strength by not using the power he had access to. The other cheek. And I'm walking in that lineage, not weak, not passive, restrained. There's a kind of strength that needs an audience to confirm it. Needs to be visibly defended every time something brushes against it. And there's a kind of strength that doesn't need the audience, doesn't need to settle every score in front of everybody. Knows the score is settled at a different desk than the one in the room. That's the strength I'm building toward, the unprovoked kind. The kind that doesn't take the bait when somebody designs it for me. The brother who curses me first is hoping I'll match his energy. That's how he wins. He gets me to come down to his level where his skills work and mine don't transfer. Refusing the invitation isn't avoidance, it's strategy. A king doesn't argue with a peasant in the street. Not because the king is afraid, because the king has a kingdom to run. And the kingdom doesn't pause for the brawl. The kingdom is the word. The other cheek, that's not weakness, that's containment. The other cheek I could have, but I chose not to. The real flex is the man who has the capacity and rules himself. Anybody can swing back. The question is who can hold still. The other cheek. Jesus modeled the highest form of strength by not using the power he had access to. The other cheek. And I'm walking in that lineage, not weak, not passive, restrained. Proverbs said he that is slow to anger is better than the mighty. And he that rules his spirit than he that takes a city. That's the metric, not the man who can take the city. The man who can rule his own spirit. That's the heart of conquest, that's the rarer one. That's the one God writes into the wisdom books. The version of me that needed every score settled. That man is exhausted, tired of being summoned by every offense to perform a defense. Tired of letting the wrong people determine the rhythm of my day. Now I let things go that the old me would've litigated for weeks. And the peace I get back is worth more than the win I would've collected. The other cheek isn't surrender, it's bandwidth recovery. It's freeing up the energy that the small fights were consuming for the large assignment that's actually mine to carry. The other cheek, that's not weakness, that's containment. The other cheek I could have, but I chose not to. The real flex is the man who has the capacity and rules himself. Anybody can swing back. The question is who can hold still. The other cheek. Jesus modeled the highest form of strength by not using the power he had access to. The other cheek. And I'm walking in that lineage, not weak, not passive, restrained. The biggest thing you'll ever do is the thing you don't do. The fight you don't take, the clapback you don't post, the argument you don't enter. Restraint is the highest form of power. He showed me that on the cross, and I'm walking it out on the corner. Joshua 6. The Lord said unto Joshua, See, I have given into thine hand Jericho and the king thereof. You shall compass the city, all you men of war, and go round about the city once. Thus shalt thou do 6 days. On the 7th day you shall compass the city 7 times, and the priest shall blow the trumpets, and the wall shall fall down flat. 6 days of walking around a wall that wasn't moving. That's the part nobody volunteers for. Israel walked around Jericho once a day for 6 days. The wall didn't move, the horns blew, the army stayed silent. And on the morning of day 2, they walked again, and the wall was still there, exactly where it had been on day 1. That's the part of obedience nobody markets in the highlight reel. The repetitive walk around, the thing that hasn't buzzed yet. The faith that keeps marching when no progress is visible to the army. The trust that the 7 days coming, even when day 3 feels like quitting. I've been walking around my own Jericho longer than I wanna admit. The wall in my life that hasn't moved despite the daily prayers. The situation that looked the same on Tuesday as it did on Monday. And I've been tempted to quit the lap, to call the assignment broken, to declare the wall permanent because it hasn't fallen by my schedule. But the 7 day isn't built on my timeline, it's built on God's calendar. And the lap I quit on day 6 is the lap that would've produced a breakthrough if I just walked one more time around what wasn't moving. The wall around Jericho, 6 days of walking, no movement. All around Jericho, I'm not quitting on day 6. The 7 days coming, and the wall is on God's calendar, not mine. And the calendar is non-negotiable. The wall around Jericho, keep walking, keep marching. The trumpets will blow when he says blow, not when I think. The wall around Jericho, and I trust the 7 day, even when day 3 feel like the whole campaign is failing. Notice God gave Joshua the entire battle plan up front. Said walk around 6 days, then 7 times on the 7th, then blow the horns. He didn't have the schedule from the leadership, but he still required them to walk the silent laps for 6 days first. Because something happens to an army that walks in obedience without proof. Something gets built in the soldiers during the days when nothing visible changes. The faith muscle, the trust posture, the readiness for the 7th day. The 7th day works because the first 6 days happen. I'm in seasons where I know God told me what he's gonna do. Seasons where the assignment is clear and the outcome has been promised, but the walking is still required between the promise and the wall coming down. And the walking is the part where most men quit the assignment, not the part where the wall falls. That part everybody wants, the part where the wall doesn't fall. That's the test that separates. And the men who finish the 6 days get to witness the 7. On the 7th day Joshua said, Shout, for the Lord hath given you the city. The shout came before the wall fell. That's the order. The shout came first, the faith confession before the visible result. The army shouted with a great shout, and the wall fell down flat. The shout was the 7-day act of faith that pulled the promise from the calendar into the moment. Whatever Jericho you're walking around right now, the wall is going to fall. The timeline isn't yours to write, but the schedule belongs to a God who keeps his promises on his calendar. Keep walking the lap, keep blowing the horn, keep marching in silence. The day will come when the assignment shifts from walk to shout. And on that day the wall that didn't move for 6 days will fall flat in front of the army that didn't quit on day 6. That's the math, that's the method, that's the 7th day. The wall around Jericho, 6 days of walking, no movement. Wall around Jericho, I'm not quitting on day 6. The 7th day's coming, and the wall is on God's calendar, not mine. And the calendar is non-negotiable. The wall around Jericho, keep walking, keep walking, keep walking, keep marching. John the Baptist lived in the desert for 30 years before he ever preached a sermon. 30 years of preparation for 3 years of ministry. That's the math nobody likes. The world tells you to skip the wilderness. God says the wilderness is the curriculum. Some assignments require you to be unknown for as long as it takes to become unbreakable. The wilderness isn't where God forgot you. The wilderness is where God built you. Yeah. The wilderness wasn't punishment. That's what nobody told me. Thought obscurity meant I was missing the calling. Thought visible was the same as anointed. Then I read about Moses, 40 years on the backside of the desert, tending somebody else's sheep with a master's education. That's not a man whose dream died. That's a man being prepared for a deliverance assignment he didn't have the character for. At 40 years old, when he tried to do it his way, the wilderness took the Egyptian out of Moses. The wilderness took the impulsive prince and gave back a meek man. And when the burning bush finally came at 80 years old, he was ready to carry weight. He couldn't have carried that 40. The same is true with David in the cave running from Saul. True with Paul in Arabia learning what the resurrection actually meant. True with Jesus himself, 40 days in the desert before ministry began. The pattern is older than the impatience. The wilderness made me, broke me down and built me back. The wilderness made me, took the version that couldn't carry the weight and replaced it with a man who can hold what's coming. The wilderness made me, the obscurity was the curriculum, the waiting was the preparation, the silence was the formation. The wilderness made me, and I'm grateful for what I hated. The wilderness made me. I spent years in rooms nobody was paying attention to, doing work nobody was crediting, building skills nobody was measuring. And I felt every minute of the obscurity at the time. Felt the way the algorithm passed me, the way the platform didn't lift. Felt the specific frustration of doing the right thing in the dark, while people doing less were getting more visible recognition. But the wilderness was teaching me something invisible couldn't have. Was teaching me to do the work without the reward attached. Was teaching me identity that wasn't dependent on response. By the time the door opened, I was a different man than the one who applied. The wilderness had taken the desperation out of me, had stripped the need to be seen down to a manageable size. Had given me a relationship with God that didn't require an audience. And that's the only kind of man who can carry the platform without the platform consuming them. The wilderness was the antidote to the influence of disease, before I was ever in danger of catching it. The wilderness made me, broke me down and built me back. The wilderness made me, took the version that couldn't carry the weight and replaced it with a man who can hold what's coming. The wilderness made me, the obscurity was the curriculum, the waiting was the preparation, the silence was the formation. The wilderness made me, and I'm grateful for what I hated. The wilderness made me. John the Baptist came preaching in the wilderness. That's the location. Not a temple, not a synagogue, not a platform. The wilderness was both his classroom and his pulpit. What was formed there became the message preached from there. You preach where you were formed, and the people who came to hear him came out to the wilderness to hear him. The location of the message draws the location of the audience. Your wilderness shaped you for the people who need to hear from somebody who has been where they are. I don't apologize for the long road anymore. The detours I call dead ends were root corrections. The doors that closed were doors I would've ruined had they opened. The years I felt forgotten were years I was being formed for the assignment I'm walking in now, and the one still ahead. And I wanna say to everyone in their own wilderness today, this is not punishment, this is not bypass, this is not God forgetting. This is preparation, specific to what's coming. The depth of what's being built in you matches the weight of what's coming for you. The wilderness made me, broke me down and built me back. The wilderness made me, took the version that couldn't carry the weight and replaced it with a man who can hold what's coming. The wilderness made me, the obscurity was the curriculum, the waiting was the preparation, the silence was the formation. The wilderness made me, and I'm grateful for what I hated. The wilderness made me. The wilderness is not where the story ends. The wilderness is where the character gets written that the rest of the story will need. Don't quit in the wilderness. The wilderness is the most important room God ever put you in. You'll thank him for it later. Joel chapter 2 verse 25. I will restore to you the years that the locust hath eaten, the cankerworm, the caterpillar, the palmer worm, my great army which I sent among you. That last line should stop you cold. The locust was his army, he sent it. And the same God who allowed the eating is the one who promises the restoration. The locust came in waves, that's the specific imagery in Joel. 4 kinds of locusts mentioned by name, each one eating a different layer. The palmer worm took what the rest left, the cankerworm took what was tender, until the land that was supposed to be productive was barren, silent. That's a picture of certain seasons in my life. I don't have to explain what one thing after another consumed what I was trying to build. By the time the locust generations were done eating, I was looking at land I couldn't tell would ever produce again. But the verse in Joel doesn't end with the destruction. It promises restoration of the specific years that were eaten. Not vague comfort, not abstract recovery. Restoration of the years. The years had names, the years had dates, the years had losses with addresses. And God promised to restore them with the same specificity. Not to give me different years, to restore the actual ones. That's the kind of redemption that doesn't pretend the loss didn't happen, but brings back the very thing the loss consumed. What the locust ate, he's restoring it. What the locust ate, specific years, not generic recovery. The cankerworm took my 20s, the palmer worm took my 30s. The army he sent ate what he's now sending back to me with interest. What the locust ate, God doesn't waste a loss, he restores the actual address, the actual years, the actual harvest. What the locust ate, and the harvest is coming on land I thought was barren too long to ever produce again. Notice God on the army in the verse. That's the hard part to receive. He didn't say the locust got past him, or the locust outsmarted him. He said my great army which I sent among you. The locust was instrumental, meaning the eating was permitted, and the permission was part of a longer plan I couldn't see in the eating. That's not the soft theology, that's the actual scripture. And the God who permitted the loss owns the responsibility for the restoration. I had to wrestle with this for years before I could receive the comfort in it. Wrestle with the question of why, if he could have stopped it, didn't he stop it? And the answer, the verse, yeah, is the stopping wasn't the deliverance. The restoration was the deliverance, and the restoration required the loss first. The harvest that's coming back is shaped by what was eaten, the man receiving. The restoration is qualified by the loss. Yeah. Joel keeps going past verse 25 if you keep reading. You shall eat in plenty and be satisfied. You shall praise the name of the Lord your God, who has dealt wondrously with you. And my people should never be ashamed. The restoration produces a specific result, the absence of shame. You can tell the years were eaten, but you can also tell they were restored, and the restored testimony has no shame attached. I'm watching some of the restoration happen in real time in my own life. Years I thought were tax write-offs, so showing up as testimony. Deposits, relationships I grieve is gone, are being rebuilt on different terms. Opportunities I'd accepted as forfeit are circling back with new vocabulary. That's not me building it, that's the Joel verse landing on the actual years. And the harvest coming back is not a duplicate of the original, it's an upgrade. The years restored with interest, the original didn't have. What the locust ate, he's restoring me. What the locust ate, specific years, not generic recovery. The cankerworm took my 20s, the palmer worm took my 30s. The army he sent ate what he's now sending back to me with interest. What the locust ate, God doesn't waste a loss, he restores the actual address, the actual years, the actual harvest. What the locust ate, and the harvest is coming on land I thought was barren too long to ever produce again. Whatever the locust ate, he's restoring the specific years, the actual losses, the exact addresses, not new ones to distract you from the old ones, the same ones. Rebuilt, return, restored.